Hi there. So, all right, I know the internet needs more generic SE4 reviews like Lemon needs another big brother. It's already enough. But I've probably got some interesting insights about these knives now. I'll get over the basic stuff in shorthand at the start of the video though. ESEE make very well regarded US made knives. They've got a great warranty. They have been around for probably about 15 to 20 years in their current iteration. And they've usually been making knives in 1095 steel with sort of simple slab style handles, and they come with like a good sheath system. Generally, all their knives are geared towards survival. Some of their later knives, their designer models are towards more bushcraft type purposes. But the numbered ESEEs are generally like small survival knives to larger survival knives. And yeah, have been very successful in their initial configuration, successful enough for them to spawn some other variants in that core line. So the SE4 here, this started out as a slab-handled SE. It moved up through, they did a handle mod version in like a leather sheath, perhaps more of a bushcrafty feeling knife. And then these later iterations here with the 3D G10 or micarta handles, in my opinion, the most comfortable and the best iteration of the numbered ESEE knives. I really like this handle, and it fits well on the hand, plus it retains that choil to choke up on, but it also retains that little bit of extra protection if your hand was inclined to slip up. So I think this is the best iteration of the SE4 so far, and I think that translates across the other numbered series also. So the basic stuff of the ESEE, apart from that, they're usually flat ground knives, apart from the SE5, which has a saber grind, as in like its stock thickness, and then the flat grind starts a little bit away from the spine. The SE3 is the thin one. The SE4 is a fairly thick little compact survival knife. The SE5 is a real tank, much thicker, more like the BK2. If you know your knives, the BK2 is like a real thick wood splitting style knife. And then the SE6 is a longer knife that's about the same thickness as the SE4, but with a 6-inch blade. Then they make the Hungless and the Hungless 2, which are your chopping knives, and a bunch of other sort of different sorts of knives, different abbreviated names. Anyway, the SE4 series come with great sheaths, these plastic sheaths. I really like them. They carry a bit high. When you put them on your belt, they give you that kind of bushcraft atomic wedgie sort of thing going on. So what I usually do is I just carry it in my pocket like a Mora. So just clip it on the outside of my pocket. For working around the yard, it flops around a little bit, but it's absolutely fine, workable. Know lots of other people do custom kydex. They modify these. There's a lot you can do. What I wish they would do was make it so these holes were uniform enough so you could just pop the clip on its side and carry it scout style, because I would probably happily carry it on the front of my belt there. But anyway, just a suggestion. As it is, it's a good sheath, and the whole package really, especially with some other knife prices getting really out of control, I think it's still a pretty good deal, especially given that aforementioned great warranty. Anyway, moving on to my personal experience. So ESEE recently started, recently, relatively speaking, started doing stainless versions of the 4, maybe the 6, and maybe the 3. I can't remember, but I know definitely the 4. Initially, it was in 440C, and then they moved up to the S35VN. I know they initially weren't stoked on the 440C. It seemed like they were a bit hesitant to warrant it. It was an exploratory steel, I think, for them. They've settled on S35VN as a stainless version of the SE4. Why would you choose the S35VN over the 1095? Well, it's a pretty good price. It's not much more expensive. It's like $10 in Australia, more expensive for a far more advanced steel than simple carbon steel. So that's the start, I suppose. And that steel is more advanced. It's got more in it that's going to last longer at the edge versus especially abrasive materials. And, especially if all you're doing is working with wood with your knife, it's going to last ages in terms of just raw edge retention until it goes dull. I got these two knives and tested them side by side, and I sharpened them both back to 20° per side edges and did edge retention testing with them. And this one does hold an edge for a whole lot longer, and you can check the video out if you want to see the full thing. But yeah, that's why I got these two knives. And then I sort of just had them as, I had this one as like a car knife. Like this was a knife that was in my car. It's why I got the bright orange one, sort of drop it on the road at night, you better find it easy, that sort of thing. And this one I would just use as basically a comparison knife. Most people know the SE4, so it's a good sort of, this is this knife and this is next to an SE4 kind of knife. And I was always kind of putting off doing the review because, as I said at the start, what do I have to say about these knives that have been said? Because they were both going fine. This one was getting used a bit to do my like outdoor tasks, opening bags of chicken feed, poking, prying, moving stuff aside. There's things that I use a knife for out in my acreage. And this guy here wasn't really getting a huge amount of use. It was just kind of my car knife, right? I think I'd taken it on some sample adventures, but that was about it. Nothing major. So I sat down and I was thinking to myself, well, I've got a couple of knives on the way. I might just do this one, knock this out, do a few quick thoughts on it. So I was shooting some stock footage, and so I did my fireplace battening. Now, fireplace battening with a knife, you always get the guy. Use an axe, it's the right tool for a job. I would argue that for thin wood, and I know the result's probably going to say otherwise, but I've 99% of the time had no problems with, in the last stage of your wood splitting, where you buy your firewood from whoever delivers your firewood. It comes in big chunks, and then you need to split it down into like the chunks that are going to burn for a while. And so yes, for that I will use either my grandson's carpenter's axe, which is probably the wrong axe according to the people who need very specific tools for the, I'll use either my carpenter's axe, which I just find the easiest to split with. And then after that, once they are thin and they need to be made into kindling and then feather sticks, I do use a knife with a rubber mallet. Super dorky, I know, but a rubber mallet. I go through one of those rubber mallets every few months or whatever. They do end up falling apart, but they're like $3, so all good. I use a knife and a rubber mallet to do really controlled small splitting. I find I can be very accurate and make really thin twigs. And then with those thin twigs, I've already got the knife in my hand, I can then make my feather stick. That's what I do, and I feel like it very rarely goes wrong for me. So anyway, I shot my tonight's firewood prep with the SE4, and I thought, I'll use that in the video review. Then I came inside and I shot a bit about the sheaths as well, and then the light reflected on the edge of the SE4. And by gum, I'm not sure if you'll see it there, I think you actually might be able to. By gum, it's got a big old roll in it. So I was like, oh. And now, I am not I'm not angry about this. I think this is just as likely to have been from me sharpening it to a 20 per side edge than it is any flaw in the steel. That being said, I've got lots of knives with the 20 edge that split my wood just fine. Moras are in a 15 per side edge on 14C28, and they haven't ever rolled on me. My Gerber in 420HC rolled on me while I was wood shaving, so that's the complete other end of the spectrum. But yeah, not an easy task, but generally a task that doesn't happen on. So I just thought it was interesting. My wood that I use, right? I use a mix of just your standard kind of piney, generic white wood for my kindling, but I do use some Aussie red gum. And Aussie red gum is one of the nastiest woods, and I always do use it as a bit of a test of my real rugged knives. This didn't do that much Aussie red gum just now, but it did do a little bit, and I suspect that's probably what's ridden up. It's like the whole wood is rather warped and twisted, and it burns amazingly. It burns for a long time, it's so dense and twisted. Great wood for fireplace. So yeah, that's probably what's done it. And then, because I needed to know, I went and did ridiculous, like heaps more with the 1095 version. I absolutely, I've moved a bunch of the coating now, and I went on and on doing it. And the 1095 is bloody perfect still. There is absolutely no deformation in that edge at all. I can run my fingers down it and feel nothing. Like, it's absolutely fine. Still pretty sharp as well. Like, battening doesn't reduce the edge of a knife particularly. Once it's the sides of the knife that do the splitting. And sometimes a knot can catch the edge and cause it to sort of dull, or I guess in this case, warp. So yeah, we've got ourselves a warp in this blade here, which is a bit of a bummer. I am not, as I said, mad at ESEE. I think perhaps if I was to leave this at the factory preset, which is probably a 25 per side, removing that steel has probably weakened it a little bit. I would argue that, yeah, some other edges with lesser steels are probably less likely to do it. Like Mora seems to have a pretty dialed in 14C28, or even the new recycled, whatever it is. Interesting. It's just interesting to me. I'm not sure if I can fix this myself. It feels like it goes up past the edge, unfortunately. So I can sort of even feel a bit of a wave in the knife, like when I run my finger there as well. So it might be a bit munted. I don't think I'm going to trouble them with a warranty swap. It's a bit of a pain from Australia, like, to do that back and forward. It certainly is an interesting data point though, seeing as I've already got the data point about the edge retention. This is two exact knives basically doing the exact thing, and this one actually did a fair bit more afterwards because I was almost trying to replicate the failure and it just didn't, and it's absolutely solid and fine. So I sort of get now. I think I can see why. I've always felt a slight hesitation from ESEE about moving past 1095. What I'd love to see them move to, and they'd be able to charge probably an extra 50 to 70 bucks per knife. Love to see them move to 3V and then have these stainless ones in Magna Cut. I think Magna Cut, you'd have less of this happening if this is a common thing. But then this may not be a common thing at all. For a start, I have modified it since it got here, so please keep that in mind. But also, Magna Cut would have a harder time. Magna Cut it lasts long at the edge because it's so tough. The toughness of Magna Cut holds the fine edge together, as well as the general more broad toughness in the knife bending sense as well. So love to see Magna Cut there, but the S35VN, I don't know if this is a common thing. If you've got an S35VN knife and you've done what I've done in this exact circumstance and yours is fine, do let me know. I don't know what hardness they run the S35 at. Maybe it's a little bit on the soft side still. It certainly holds its edge longer than the 1095, but it's still, maybe it's at 56 or something, and then that's more inclined to warp. And I mean, I guess it didn't shatter and it didn't break and a big chunk didn't come out. So it's not the worst way a knife can go wrong. Absolutely not. But definitely a data point, definitely of interest for you, I hope. And I certainly don't bemoan ESEE. I'm not going to go all clickbaity and everything on the story here. I think it's just, if you are interested between these two knives, this would be a fine belt, camp, kitchen knife type, general purpose knife. But if you are going to put anything through too hard a paces, I would definitely suggest the 1095 being the one that's still the one you can really set your watch to. So that's my take. Hope you've enjoyed this little follow-up review. Not really a review, but anyway, that's it for you today. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.